What are some lies your parents told you when you were a kid? My dad told me the car wouldn't start without the seatbelt on. Like, the vehicle does not function unless everyone has a belt on, and that all cars functioned like this. I think I was like 11 when someone told me that wasn't true. As far as lies go, not so bad. That's actually a smart idea. If I was Elon Musk, I'd add this to Teslas. Sadly, all I can do is wish. No car company would actually ever add it. It's too much of a risk, because if for whatever reason it failed, and a person died of an injury that could have been prevented by a seatbelt, it would leave them open to being sued. Toyota did that. There was an interlock in some model years, where it wouldn't start if a seat had people, and no seatbelt. We had one where the seatbelt sensor was broken, so you had to get up to start the car. We called it butts up. But it would just act like a normal car then. You need to go to college to get a good job. I wish I had gone into a trade instead. Curious, what do you do now to wish you went into a trade? I worked in HVAC for 7 months, and it was horrible. I'm an accountant now, about to finish my degree. Best decision ever. I worked office jobs until I was 33. I work for the post office now, but I wish I had become a welder or electrician or something. I'm considering learning now, but I'm 37, and I feel like I've got a decent enough gig already. I dunno, I just like manual labor. Office space rings shockingly true to me. Trust me, you will make more working at the post office than you ever will working in a trade. One of the reasons why I left. The trades are dead. I wasn't about to work away 20 years of my life before I got what I wanted. My parents would always tell me if I didn't clean my teeth properly, Mr. Decay would come and put holes in my teeth as I slept. Due to this story, I always cleaned my teeth well, so I wasn't too worried about him. However, when I was older, my employer's 5-year-old son showed me a cavity he had and told me he had to see the dentist. I commented, "Oh no, Mr. Decay got you." Ended up freaking out the kid, who then became obsessed with getting his older cousin to find Mr. Decay and bash him. I couldn't understand why the kid wasn't smart enough to just brush his teeth well, so there would be no reason to worry about it. Boss was not impressed, and I learned it's best to just pass these lies down your own kids. My father told us as kids that the brown spots on a ripe banana are the sweet spots. Yes, and I mean years later, I saw my dad throwing the ripe, brown part of a banana into the trash. "Dad, why are you throwing the best part of the banana away?" Answered, "The best part? That's the rotten part." I recounted to him what he told us as children about those being the sweet spots. He nearly fell over laughing and explaining. He said that so we would be quiet and just eat the bananas. I was 47. I had even told this to my own children, now 27 and 21. When we were around 8 or 10, me and my brother found a couple of kittens on the street and brought them home. My parents poker-faced and said, "Oh, you guys are so kind, saving the kittens." Next morning, we went to check out the kittens, and as you would imagine, they were gone. We rushed to my mum and, crying our eyes out, my mum said, "Sorry, all the kittens were eaten by the cockroaches. I can show you the remain bodies if you guys want to." We just cried and set up a mini memorial. How naive we were. Who on earth would believe that but us? That my dad was actually my stepdad and my real dad abandoned me and my mom before I was even born. I was 14 when I found out. I saw my birth certificate for the first time at 17, and next to father it's just blank. She knows who my real dad is, and I've seen pictures. I'm a carbon copy of the dude, same birthmarks and everything, just shorter. He died apparently before I even knew. My mom wasn't aware of that because we didn't live in the same state anymore. I found out on my own. When applying for a job, it's better to do it in person and hand in your physical resume cover letter to the manager. Yeah, now, in today's world, everything has to be done online. My roommate tried to tell me this a lot this past year. I would have to try to explain to her that is not the case. My first job actually only had online applications. For the most part, gone are the days where you can just show up and apply, keep coming back and asking for an interview job. When I was very young, my dad told me that the crawl space contained giant child-eating spiders, and if I ever opened it, I would be immediately gobbled up. instead of, saying hey don't go in here, it's potentially dangerous, and if you fall or get injured it would be difficult to help you out to keep me and my brother from playing in there. He went right to the spiders. 30 plus years later I battle a crippling phobia of all bugs, especially spiders. Thanks Dad. Not my parent, but when I was a kid I had a friend whose dad had a Citroen Picasso, and she told me it could fly. I was about 5, and pretty gullible. I asked her dad if it was true, and he played along, and said it could, but only with a certain battery, which he didn't have. I was thinking about it about a year ago, and that's when it dawned on me that Citroen Picassos can, in fact, not fly. Christ, I was thick. When I was a kid had something, and wanted my mom to look over and see, I called her, and she'd always reply yeah I'm looking, though clearly she was not, and sometimes responding that from another room. I still remember this to this day. Along with the woohoo that's so good cool. Mum I know you didn't look, you can't fool me. Yeah, especially every time I would jump into a pool. Like alright fine don't look, this is how children drown. I used to get 100 for my birthday from my grandma, and my mum asked to give it to her so she could put it on my bank account. There was no bank account. At the end of the day it doesn't matter, I got enough stuff as a kid and would have probably been really irresponsible with the money. That's not the point though, the money was specifically earmarked for you to be an irresponsible kid and buy candy and other useless stuff. My dad taught me that to change the TV channel you use a remote rather than a remote. I knew that remote was a word, but remote was also a separate word, what you used for the TV. I believed this up until I was 17, when I forced my high school boyfriend to look it up in the dictionary to prove he was saying it wrong. My dad still finds this hilarious. That I don't like spicy food. We never had pizza as well, because neither of my parents liked cheese. Then I had pizza around my mid-teens, and have loved it since. I didn't have a curry until I was 18. I was reluctant because THYRESPIGY and had a tikka masala that opened up a whole world of spices and flavors. That we were the happiest family in the world. My father would constantly ask me to name a happier family. Whenever I would question wrong things he would do, he would insist that we were the happiest family ever and that I shouldn't question anything at home. The little boy I was believed it, but once I learned to think critically, that perception absolutely shattered. My mom used to say that she always wanted 3 kids. My little brother had health problems his whole life, died in his early 20s, and a few years later my dad revealed that they'd actually decided, after I was born, that they only wanted 2 kids and my little brother happened by mistake. I think they were in the right to have lied about it. My parents told my brother and I that we used to have a brother named Billy, but he was bad, so they flushed him down the toilet. For years I didn't know if I believed them or not, but I would always look into the toilet to try and figure out how he fit down there. Sometimes I would call his name to see if he was really down there. My mom told me for breastfeeding mothers one breast was milk, the other was juice. I had to have been 14 when an aunt of mine was nursing, and I brought it up. She laughed and said no, they're both milk, you wanna taste? I looked at my mother with utter shock. She laughed and said you believed me? Yeah, you are my mother. My mom drove manual transmission Toyota Camry. She swore to us that the car wouldn't start until everyone's seat belts were on, and when I called her on it, she'd turn the key, and of course nothing would happen, because she wouldn't press the clutch in. Japanese safety technology brilliance. Santa didn't like peanut butter cookies. Santa liked all cookies at my house, but he always wanted a beer instead of milk. I figured it was because we were probably one of his last stops and he wanted to relax after work with a beer instead of milk like my dad did. Made sense to me. When I was learning how to dry myself with a towel after baths and showers, my mother said it was extremely important that I run the towel between my toes, because otherwise my toes could rot off. Years later I realized she was basically describing gangrene. My dad died from a plane crash when I was really young. When I'd ask where he was, my mom would tell me he was asleep. I remember asking when he would wake up. I don't remember the answer. Quite frankly, she must have brushed it off and changed the subject every time. Every Halloween, without fail, Heath bars are not for children. Only grown-ups can eat them. I thought maybe they had alcohol in them and wondered why people were giving them out to trick-or-treaters. If you eat your bread crust, you'll be able to whistle. My dad told me that I'd get to make the rules when I could beat him at chess. When I finally did, I was still young enough to believe him when he told me that I'd get to make the rules when I could beat him at arm wrestling. These were both lies. Not my parents, they never really lied to me, but my grandma had some loose screws. She told me that the heart is in the middle of the chest just below the ribcage and that global warming was a myth. It's hard to think she once had a job being a chemist. Telling me one drug use and you're addicted for life, so obviously I tried drugs, and it turns out no, the light stuff is only addictive if you let it be, like soft drinks or cell phones. I'm definitely addicted to those too. Instead of explaining traffic, I was told driving on the yellow line sets your tires aflame. Disturbing but weirdly effective. And all the black lines on the road are for bad drivers going over the line. Technically not a lie, but my father told us that fair was the F word and that we shouldn't use it. It worked until we were old enough to find out differently for ourselves. Clarification. Watermelon seeds grow watermelons in your stomach. I remember the days where I individually took out the seeds and placed them on the side of the table. I think I forgot about them once. When I was young, I asked my mom, "Where do babies come from?" and she said they fall out of airplanes. And when I was really young, I happened to fall out of one, and she caught me. The inside of your bottom eyelid can tell how tired you are. If it's yellow, it means we are very tired and need to go to bed. If it's reddish pink, we weren't very tired. My dad used to tell me that if I went out in the winter with bare legs, my legs would get fat. And we wonder why I have body image issues. Bread won't rise unless you're very quiet. We made bread a lot. I have passed this on to other parents with noisy kids. You're welcome.